This is why I call my channel Secrets in Stone. If you look at them and you analyze them, they will tell you things. Kind of my mission is go to these places and talk about these sites that nobody else is talking about. There's a subset of the structures in Cambodia that I believe were built by a different civilization. The case for the things in the Angkor area being older than what they say. Number one is all of these LIDAR results. Number two are these almost machined technologies. Are we looking at the remnants of some sort of industrial process, ancient industrial process? This is the most impressive ancient structure I've seen with my own two eyes. The story you'll hear is there's just one wall and all the rest of them have been destroyed. But that's actually not true. There's walls like this all the way up the West Coast. The thing that I haven't talked about yet publicly that I want to talk about on this show .
Good. So Cassie Coppersmith, welcome to the Matt Beall podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I'm very excited to chat with you today. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So you have a successful YouTube channel called Secrets in Stone, and you're a social media personality who likes to explore ancient history and some mysteries around ancient history. So, and that's going to be a lot of fun to dive into that today. How else would you describe yourself?
You know, I think It all started because of just a love of travel. That's how I picked my career. That's how I picked my post-career hobbies. And so, I think traveling around the world, seeing especially the ancient sites, that's my big passion. And I tend to go to sites that most other people don't go to. So I think if I could say that I have a niche, that's probably it, is just sites most people haven't seen. And then I bring it to my YouTube channel and I talk about it. And, people get really excited that there's pyramids in Thailand and things like that. So it's just been a lot of fun. Very cool.
Very cool. And as a kid growing up, you just let me know, you gave me the most incredible, no offense to any of my other guests who have dropped off gifts, but you gave me what I think is the most incredible gift that I've received from any guest thus far. Can you tell people what this is?
So these are 3 lithic points. The center point is called a cougar mountain. So these are all from our private collection. Both my husband and I's grandfathers collected points. And we have a fair bit of private land in Nebraska and Colorado. And so we hunt around a little bit too.
That's cool.
And that center point is called Cougar Mountain. It's about a 13,000 to 8,000 year old point. So that point in particular would have been used to hunt a lot of really extinct megafauna now, the mammoths, the mastodons, the bison antiquus, things like that. So it's a little piece of history. It's a very old point. And then the points on either side of it are a little bit newer, probably 1 to 2,000 years old. And you can see, I have a whole episode on the Clovis Point, and I talk about the technology that was used to create the Clovis Point, which was the oldest, most advanced point that was ever created. And the point I made in that video was that over time, obviously the lithics got a lot smaller, but they also, the quality of them reduced, the size of them reduced for obvious reasons. They were hunting smaller animals. And I make a bit of a case that archaeology accepts that points in lithic technology went from very advanced to not advanced over time. But they don't accept that in megalithic construction. So that was how I linked the two. But I obviously have always had a big passion for lithics. And so I thought you like old things. I got to see your amazing vase collection. And so we wanted to bring you one of the old things that we have.
Very cool. Very cool. Love it. Yeah, super thoughtful. Thank you. And I'll display it with the rest of the gifts up there. But, well, good. So you've been traveling a lot, right? In the last 6 months, you gave me a list of places that you've been. Where do you want to start? I want to kind of go through your travels and go through some of maybe the more incredible places that you've been to and some of the mysteries that you've explored in those spots. So I know Angkor Wat was maybe one of the one of the earlier destinations?
Angkor Wat. So I went to Cambodia. I actually co-hosted a tour with Derek Olson, who I know you've had on the show. He's amazing, and shout out to Derek. He's the whole reason I got into this. Yeah, cool. He and I were on a tour together in England, and he mentioned, he's like, gosh, you know a lot about these ancient sites. Have you thought about having a YouTube channel? And I said, absolutely not. That is not my thing. And, noodled on it for about a year and ended up, of course, starting a YouTube channel. So Derek and I have been very close since the beginning. And so he and I hosted a tour together in Cambodia in November, which was an amazing tour. I would say of all of the places in the world, Cambodia is the place that has truly sort of captured my imagination as far as there's so much there and people don't talk about it. It's being discovered, every day. There's new things being discovered with LIDAR in Cambodia. So I do want to get into Cambodia with you on this show for sure. So we did Cambodia, and then I went off and did my own trip to Laos, to southern Laos. There's some ancient sites in just over the border of Cambodia that I visited. So that was end of last year. And then early this year, I went to Thailand and discovered that there was a buried pyramid in Thailand, which was really amazing. Then we popped over to Easter Island in Peru. I got to spend some time with Brian Forrester in Peru, who I know has been on this show. He's a wonderful human being.
Yep, for sure.
And then my last trip, which just wrapped up about a week ago, was to India, to southern India.
Nice.
So it's been a bit of a around the world tour for the last 6 months. I think in the next 6 months, I'm probably going to take it easy.
Okay, gotcha. You got enough content to last you.
I think so.
So what? So in terms of all the places that you've been to, what was the most incredible, the most inspiring spot?
I think as far as ancient history goes, Cambodia's the one that I just am fascinated by. I spend way too much time every single day thinking about Cambodia. The place that I felt the best in was Easter Island in Peru, which is interesting because both of those places are described as the navels of the world. And you can absolutely tell when you're there why they built the ancient structures where they did. Because it just feels good to be there. You feel like you're being healed. You feel healthy and happy, and your soul is happy. So I think Cambodia for ancient history, and Peru and Easter Island probably just for the quality of the trip and the food and the megaliths. That it was really incredible.
Nice. Yeah, my wife and I went to Peru a couple of 2 years ago in November, I think it was, and just blown away and amazing. I mean, the walls there in the Cusco Valley and just the structures, there's just no, that in terms of what I've seen in this world, that place stands out to me as the one that just makes no sense.
I totally agree with you. And, you cannot stand in front of those stones, especially at Sacsayhuaman,
right, and
not just be awed. And of course it raises all sorts of natural questions about how on earth, who on earth, and why on earth.
Right. Totally. Yeah. It's like the hammer chisel thing it just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I have seen Egypt and I've seen Pumapunku in Bolivia. I still think the walls in Peru are the pinnacle of megalithic building in the world.
Yeah, for sure. Well, why don't we go to Angkor Wat? Why don't we start there and kind of dig into that trip and that site there? Because honestly, I have not covered this site a lot with any guests, so this will kind of be a first for the podcast to dive into that area.
Amazing.
A little bit. Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah. What is like the mainstream explanation for when it was built? Is it like an 11th century, 12th century type?
So the mainstream explanation is that almost everything you see in Cambodia was built by the Khmer Empire between 800 AD and 1400 AD.
Okay.
So there was about a 600 or 700 year period there where they supposedly built everything.
And who were these people?
They were actually a really phenomenal empire. They sort of came out of nowhere in 800 AD. There were warring tribal factions in Cambodia, according to the official stories. The first king showed up. He, in my opinion, claimed a couple of sites that may have already been there and built an empire. And, over the course of the 600 years, I mean, there are Chinese accounts of emissaries coming from China visiting Cambodia during, the late stages of the Khmer Empire, and they describe it as absolute grandeur. So, elephants laced in gold with, 25,000 people, going down, stone roads that it was a spectacular sight, and they truly were an extremely powerful empire. And I believe that a lot of the things that you see in Cambodia, what most people don't know is there's 4,000 different temples in Cambodia. So you go there and you can visit Cambodia 20, 30 times with the goal of looking at different sites every time you go and still not even come close to seeing everything. It's that vast. And it wasn't just around Siem Reap, which is where Angkor Wat is. It was a huge empire that spanned up to Thailand. It spanned to southern Laos, all the way around, basically all of what is modern day Cambodia. And as part of this empire, they had literally thousands of kilometers of roads connecting all parts of this empire. So this was, it was an incredible empire, for sure, no doubt. What I have started to realize in my research is I think that there's a subset of the structures in Cambodia that I believe were built by a different civilization, a prior civilization. And I think probably the first half of the kings of that empire, went around and just systematically claimed those sites as theirs. And when I say claimed, that's a little bit of an overreach. They put inscriptions on these ancient structures, and they talked about dedicating idols and lingams, and they talk about repairs. They don't actually ever claim to have built them. So it's not a Ramses, situation where he's claiming them. That they mostly just left inscriptions on them. But I think that about for the first half of the empire, they were claiming older sites, and we can talk about some of these sites because they're amazing. There's 8 different pyramids in Cambodia, which most people don't know. They look a lot like some of the Mayan pyramids we see in Mexico. And then I think in the latter half of the empire, they really were starting to build their own stuff. So you can see things like the Bayon Temple, which is this famous temple that has 108 faces on the towers.
Wow.
I think that those later structures were built by the Khmer. And so when they were in the height of their grandeur, I do believe that they had a vast building program going on.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I hope Ryan's ready because I want to see some pictures.
Yes. And I have, Ryan, I have a Cambodia folder and, an entire presentation here. So if Matt, if you'd like, we can start with kind of the general overview of the area.
That's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so in the photo that's on the screen, this is an aerial view of the Angkor Wat area. So you see Angkor Wat kind of toward the bottom of the photo. And just to give you a sense of scale here, Angkor Wat within that moat is 400 acres. So so on the bottom part of the right there where the cursor is.
Oh, wow.
Inside that moat is 400 acres.
Wow. Okay.
So when you look at the layout of Angkor Wat, the thing you're struck by first and foremost is the water. I mean, there's a massive amount of water, lots of artificial engineering going on here. There are the 2 water features you see on the left and right are called the Eastern and Western Barrays. And these are the largest hand-cut reservoirs on Earth. The Western Baray is 8 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide. So there's an international airport south of the Western Baray, the old airport. Ryan, if you go down 2 slides to slide 3, I have an arrow pointing at the airport. So you can see the scale of the airport compared to the size of the Western Baray.
Wow.
It's just massive. The Eastern Baray is the same. It's dried up now. And so you start to get a sense of how big this place is. And this is all just north of Siem Reap. The empire itself is across the whole country. And you see some things like this all over the place.
Incredible.
In 2012 and 2014, there was a LIDAR campaign, a really large LIDAR campaign that scanned the entire country effectively. It was run by a scientist named Damien Evans, who was an Australian archaeologist. He's since passed away, unfortunately. But when those scans came out, it changed everything about the way that we view Cambodia. So the slide that's on the screen is an overhead LIDAR view of Angkor Wat. The two things that they discovered at Angkor Wat that blew everybody's minds are inside the moat, you see these really large mounds. There were hundreds of them, both inside and outside the moat. This moat, by the way, is a mile long.
Where are those mounds? Are the things up on the top?
Yeah, so you see the photo of the actual Angkor Wat structure.
And that's
all surrounding that structure. Those are all mounds.
Okay.
These mounds are huge. They're like 30 feet across.
Okay.
So when I was on the tour with Derek in Cambodia, I somehow convinced several of the people on the tour to go out into the jungle, which it is the jungle just outside of Angkor Wat, to look at these mounds and to walk around on the mounds.
So the mounds are all covered up by jungle at this point?
Yes, and nobody knew, you can see big undulations, but you can't really, when you're on the ground, and that's what the goal of going out to that corner and looking at it, is I wanted to see, were these obvious, or is this something that it's expected that they would have overlooked this? And when you're there, you really can't tell until you're on top of one, and then you realize, gosh, everything around me is much lower than where I am. Or when you're at the bottom of it, same thing. You're looking up and you're like, there's a lot of undulation back here. But
it looks natural-ish enough until you see that they're all in these perfect geometric shapes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, all of Cambodia is covered with dense vegetation. So you can't expect them to have seen this. There's not stones in these mounds. On some of these mounds, they found some later stage pottery, but that they don't really know what these mounds were for. So here's an aerial view. You can see the trees, so they couldn't see any of this without the use of LIDAR.
So so all that dark is just trees and forest, basically.
It's all trees, okay. Yes.
And, wow, okay. And so, is this like, are the people thinking that this is like similar to Native American burial mounds, or?
They have not found any burials in these mounds. There's mound fields all over Cambodia. In some of them, in places that are famous like Angkor Wat, that people would have lived on them in later stages. So the archaeologists call them occupation mounds. But the mound fields that you find in other parts of Cambodia, there's zero archaeological evidence in them or around them. So I believe that they were made for something besides, it was definitely not burial. And I don't think that it was for occupying either.
So what does that mean, occupational mound?
The archaeologists, when they recreate what they believe was happening inside Angkor Wat, they're basically saying in between all of these mounds there were pools of water that they would have used to drink or feed their crops, and they would have lived on top of the mounds.
Oh, okay.
And they're saying 4 or 5 families would have lived on each mound, and they would have had their own water, and this is what they were doing with these. Personally, I don't buy that, especially, I'll show you some of the other mound features that they found in Cambodia, but yeah, so the mounds are one thing, but I would say the star of the show, the thing that blew everybody's minds, is just south of Angkor Wat are these geometric features. So those are huge earthen embankments. It's 1 mile long and half a mile wide, south of Angkor Wat. So you see the spirals on the screen.
Yeah.
And Ryan, if you wouldn't mind going back one slide. Yep. So you can see an up close of these spirals. The trench that is dug in the middle of this spiral field is a newer trench. So originally, these spirals would have been all the way, basically filling up that yellow square. They have no idea what these were. They're very geometric. They're extremely large. And they're not just found at Angkor Wat. They're found at least in 2 other sites near water, always near water features. Of course, archaeologists have speculated that they may have been a garden feature, that they may have been used for fish hatcheries, all of kind of the normal things you would expect people to say when they see something like that. Damien Evans, the archaeologist who did all of these scans, he didn't speculate. He said, we have no idea what this is. The 2 things he said is, it's so big we have to expect that it had a very distinct purpose. And we can learn, that this trench that was dug in the middle of these spiral mounds is not a new trench. This was a Khmer era trench.
Where's that?
This is the dark lines going through. Yep, right there.
Okay.
So that was built, maybe around the 1300s, which means that the spirals are much older. And so you can start to, using LIDAR, you can start to say what was the original landscape versus what was happening potentially later.
So the 12 or 1300s, that trench was built by the people that were occupying the territory at the time?
By the Khmer Empire, yeah.
And so so those geometric shapes would have existed where the trench was prior to this trench being dug?
And, I think it's possible the Khmer didn't even know that those were there.
Right. Interesting.
Completely covered up.
Yeah. Okay, and so no idea. But so those, basically we're looking at mounds. The lighter part of those geometric shapes on the bottom would have been where the ground is elevated.
Correct.
And then the darker part is where it was lower. And so in theory, it may have been filled with water on the lower spot, and then who knows why, fish hatcheries or something much more interesting, I guess.
And you can start to speculate about what it could have been. I don't know that I have a picture of it, Ryan, but there's a nuclear site, I think in Florida actually, called Turkey Point.
Okay.
And if you look at the aerial photos of Turkey Point, it looks, the nuclear cooling ponds basically look a lot like that.
Okay.
I'm not saying that this was a nuclear facility, but it does raise interesting questions about what were they doing over, a mile long and half a mile wide, building embankments that are of this size. What would the purpose of that been? So, yeah, it's a true mystery.
Just a huge mystery. Yeah, so we have no idea, basically.
Correct.
And what are those rectangles in the middle? That's just like further.
They look like ponds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's another view of Angkor Wat from the air, and wow. It gives you a little bit of a different perspective of the mounds and the spiral embankments.
That's incredible. I mean, that would have been just a fully occupied city. And the only question is, was it where did Khmer? So
Khmer, Khmer.
Khmer. So it's not like the car. Did the Khmer people? Did they? So the only question is, did they build on top of something that was already there, or did they build all this stuff from scratch?
Correct.
Yeah.
Now,
and the LIDAR is like the game-changing thing because it just shows the vastness of this empire.
Right. And, I get the strong sense that, of course, this LIDAR information is not public. So the only places you can find images like this are in published reports. So they kept a very tight lock on these. Mm-hmm. It makes sense to do that because you don't want treasure hunters going, looking at publicly available LIDAR information and going out and digging where they see interesting things.
Sure.
But it does feel a little bit like this was problematic for the mainstream story. And once Damien Evans passed away, you don't really see anything coming out talking about the LIDAR results in Cambodia. For the last several years, there's no new reports. So nobody's doing ongoing research, as far as I've seen, talking about this, I think because it really just raises so many questions.
I wonder if people could have just been living on the raised part. So we're looking at the part on the bottom with the water, where the water would have been coming in and out. And it would be just like having a stream outside of your house that you could bathe and clean and wash and do everything, you know, if the water was somehow flowing through that. And then the center, who knows what the hell it was.
Yeah.
But then the centerpiece is like, is a big moat with a massive, is this like where the king lived or something, or what?
Yeah. So the king that supposedly built this, they claim that it was built as a burial temple. So Angkor Wat is one of the only temples in the Siem Reap area facing west. And so in most Hindu temples, they face east toward the rising sun. Mm-hmm. This one supposedly faces west. Mm-hmm. I have my questions about that too, Matt.
Okay.
So if you look at this LIDAR photo and you didn't know anything about where you're supposed to enter Angkor Wat, where would you think you would enter?
I mean, from the right side, I guess, right? Yeah.
From the extremely large entryway.
Yeah.
So I think it's possible, and I can't prove this. I think it's possible that the core of Angkor Wat, when you're inside Angkor Wat, it's really interesting because it's 3 different layers. It's almost like a pyramid. So there's the outer wall that you can see in this image. Then you walk through it, then you walk up, and then you see an inner wall, and then you walk further up, and you see the core of the temple. In the core of it, all of the imagery are these beautiful Hindu deities. It's all meant to be a place of spirituality, a place of worship. As you progress through the layers of the walls and you get to the outside, you start to see all of these battle images. The king on his elephant fighting other tribes. You know, it's a massive juxtaposition between the inner and the outer of this temple, which leads me to believe that the core of it is really old. And that as the Khmer Empire came along, they found this beautiful core and they built around it. And they added their own images glorifying their kingdom and their king and things like that. So it is possible that the core of the structure was originally there and that it did face east. And when you're walking out of the east entrance, which you can do, and you turn around and you look at Angkor Wat, it looks like a much more natural approach to Angkor. If you're walking in today, all tourists go in across that small bridge you see on the west side, the left of the photo, and you walk up this very long entryway into Angkor Wat. So again, I think it's some indication that there was an older structure originally that was built upon at later times. So yeah, so this video is the way that the tourists approach Angkor Wat from the west.
This is from the west.
Yes, so this
smaller
is
entrance.
Today's tourist entrance.
Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's smaller on LIDAR, but it's still
big. Yeah.
Man, when you're there, I mean, it's multiple hours, and you still don't really see everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really incredible place.
What's the latitude? Is it basically like equatorial? Is it like Florida-ish?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I don't know what the latitude of Angkor Wat is.
I think it's got to be around there. Those look like
it's hot like Florida, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Those look like cabbage palms that look like what we grow natively here outside. So interesting. Did I see something about so we're way okay, we're south here potentially. Did I see something about the there being a depiction of some extinct megafauna on the wall of this? Was it like some type
the four-tusked elephant?
Yeah, what is that all about?
I don't have a photo of it, but you can Google it. I know Derek Olson actually posted about this. He went and found the four-tusked elephant and took photos of it. So there's depictions of four-tusked elephants in Cambodia for sure, in Indonesia for sure. And, you know, some social media influencers claim that they were this was an animal from millions of years ago. If you actually look, it's a gomphlophir is what they're called.
Okay.
And gomphlophires, it's a little bit of a tongue twister. they went extinct around the Ice Age. So it is absolutely possible. It's possible that people found their, so this is from Angkor Wat.
Is that it?
Yep. And you can see there's two tusks. Yeah, this is a great video. Is that Praveen? Yeah. So Praveen makes
two tusks on each side, and this was an elephant that went extinct during the at the end of the Ice Age.
Yeah. So, that leaves two options. One, it's actual human memory of this creature, or that skeletons were found and it was, I guess became a venerated sort of animal based on skeletal remains.
So that's two options if this was built when mainstream says it was built, and then is there another option for you, which is this is much older and it was built at that period of time?
I don't personally believe that this. So the elephant is in one of the outer layers of Angkor Wat.
Okay.
So I don't think that the outer layers were built during the Ice Age. Personally,
Gotcha.
It's totally possible that the core of Angkor Wat was.
So do we have pictures of the core? I want to see I want to show the audience maybe what the part of this facility that they could have, that was built on top of, that was potentially built on top of.
Yeah, so if we look up Central Sanctuary Angkor Wat.
And how big is the actual structure?
Huge.
Yeah.
So the inside the moat is 400 acres. So it takes multiple hours to walk through that if you're doing it quickly.
So you're probably talking 40 acres or something for that
for just
structure.
The core structure, yeah, if not more. The interesting thing about the core of Angkor Wat is there's 5 towers in the middle, and you'll see this across most of the temples in Cambodia. There's these beautiful towers that have very interesting geometries inside and outside. And the towers in the core of Angkor Wat look, when you're standing in there, they look a little bit melted. They look very, very old. They look almost vitrified.
Okay.
And that could be a function of the fact that most of the stones in Angkor Wat that they build with are made of sandstone. So sandstone, of course, wears down faster than granite or things that you would see in other places.
Is that sandstone? Or
This is sandstone.
Is it? Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, there's different kinds of sandstone that I think actually provide very interesting clues to the age of some structures. There's some very hard sandstone. It's called greenish graywacke. It's almost as hard as granite. This is not that. This is just a regular sandstone. So it's possible that the core of Angkor Wat looks the way it does just because of the general passage of time. I would argue it could not have worn down that much. Ryan, if you wanted to search maybe close-up view of Angkor Wat towers, you might be able to find some better photos of the way that it looks melted. So it could either have been worn down over time, but I don't think it could wear down that much in 800 years.
Right.
So if it was just a time erosion issue, I think that shows that it is a much older core. If it was being used for some sort of an industrial purpose, it's possible that what you're seeing here is actually some sort of a reaction that made it look like this. And you can see it's just the towers that look really, really worn down, almost melted.
Yeah, it's beautiful, whatever it is. So
yeah.
So it was built, the mainstream explanation is built as a burial basically for the king and the guy who built all of this stuff. Was it used for anything else at that?
That's a great photo. So you can see how it looks a little bit melted.
And that the spiral thing on the left, I read a little bit about those. There's not a great explanation for how those were created with the tools at the time. Is that true?
That is true. And I think, if I can summarize the case for the things in the Angkor area being older than what they say.
Yeah.
Number one is all of these LIDAR results. Number two are these almost machined technologies that you see all around Angkor Wat. And so if we want to move on from these towers, we can talk about those lathed pillars.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So these are called spindles, the left picture and the middle picture. They're, archaeologists call them window dressings. And you can see when you walk up to them, some of them are small. At the pyramid sites and the sites that I believe are older, they're very, very large. There's a site that we can talk about called Kokare that I think is the oldest in Cambodia. The lathed spindles are probably a foot or maybe bigger across. They're huge. They're not as big as the lathed pillars in India, for sure. But they're still machined. It's clear that they are. In India, they acknowledge that they had lathes, although they argue that they were turned by animals or people. They don't say that they were machines. In Cambodia, they don't acknowledge lathes. So if you speak to the tour guides on the ground, if you read any of the archaeology reports, they basically say that these artifacts were carved using hammer and chisel.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Even
Have
though
they measured the circle, the
perfectly
circularity?
clear. I mean, I haven't seen any studies, any scans of these, any studies. These are all just my photos, walking up to them, taking videos. The photo on the right is an actual pillar at one of the pyramids.
But you can see the lines going through the things. You can see the horizontal circle marks that clearly, so were they taking a hammer and chisel and just going around in perfect circles?
Yes.
Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. Clearly these were turned.
Yes. And one of the questions I have, at the oldest sites, they're open air. So, the one in the middle, you can see it's enclosed. But on the left and at many of the older sites, it was standing open air, meaning air could flow around it in any direction, just like, this photo at Angkor Wat.
Why is that such a stretch for people to consider the possibility that ancient people could turn something in a circle?
I don't think that is a stretch. I think the stretch is that they had a machine to turn something in a circle.
But all you have to do is even if you just held up something to it. And so machine, sure. Machine, you've got something mounted, some harder on the Mohs scale stone or something that as the thing is spinning and turning, you're just holding the thing onto it and just cutting it as it turns, you know? So whether that's done by a machine or by hand, it's going to impact the level of precision and circularity, of course, and that's hard to know without scanning it and really getting into the detail of the numbers. But to say that these were hammered and chiseled around, all the way around, as opposed to turned and just cut, either by hand or with some stationary, thing, is just crazy.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't make any sense.
It boggles my mind, the things that we can see with our own eyes.
Yeah.
And then the story that's told around them. But
because it doesn't fit
honestly,
the
Matt,
story.
most people don't either they just don't care or they don't think about it, which is totally fine if you're interested in other things.
Yeah.
But they don't question. And one thing I like to do when I go to ancient sites is I love to hire a local tour guide and just ask them questions just to hear what they're being taught, right? And I have asked probably at this point 5 or 6 tour guides in both Cambodia and Laos, and all of them say, no, these weren't machines. These were not lathed. These are carved. So,
okay.
So I think that there's evidence for ancient technology being used in Cambodia.
Are there any other? Are there any other types of precision cuts or drills or any other interesting stuff in the stone, or is it mostly the circularity of the pillars?
If you go to slide 16, so if you look at that top left artifact, that to me looks machined.
Yeah.
And on my Instagram page, I do have videos of that artifact. So to answer your question, I haven't seen any evidence of core holes or, I don't even think I've seen nubs in Cambodia.
Okay.
But what you do see are very sophisticated working of ancient stone. Now, if you the slide on the screen, the point I'm making here is it's like Ben Van Kerkwyk says, it's the tale of two industries in Cambodia. You see images like the top left, and then you see where they were trying to replicate them at later times with inferior stone. The top left stone is that very, very hard greenish gray wax sandstone that I was telling you about, which, has interesting properties. It's higher in quartz, things like that. So, it could have had a different purpose than simply mounting a statue. The central photo of the woman with the red sandstone, that's at a site called Bantier Srey. That red sandstone is a very hard sandstone as well. And you can see just the sophistication of the carvings within this sandstone compared to the later image on the right, which is a much softer sandstone and a far inferior version of that carving in the middle. So as I start to go around Cambodia and look at all these different sites, it becomes really clear that there was an original, very sophisticated stoneworking technology in Cambodia that was then later copied into some of the later structures there.
So how old do you think those two better works are?
I don't know. I mean, I know in my opinion, it was far, far older. So, we're talking, it would just be a rough guess. I think that it's possible that some of the pyramid sites could be pre-Diluvian, especially Kokare. Some of the later sites, maybe 5 to 10,000 years old, because they were very run down by the time the Khmer found them and rebuilt them.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Well, where are you taking us next?
So I think, Ryan, if you can go down to slide 10. So everybody's used to seeing kind of the Egyptian statues and the hard stone, large statues with these very serene faces. What most people don't know is that in Cambodia, these were also found. And all three of these images were found at a site called Kokare, which is about 200 miles northeast of Angkor Wat, or 200 kilometers. And these statues are unexplainable in the history of the artistic tradition in Cambodia, meaning they were only found at this site. They're extremely sophisticated. They're very, very large. And they're made of that very hard sandstone, greenish gray wax sandstone. So Ryan, if you want to go to like the next slide, you can just sort of cycle through these. These are more of them that were found there. One thing that did happen when they excavated in the early 1900s, the French came in and excavated in Cambodia. These statues were cataloged, photos were taken, and then they were promptly stolen. So most of these have disappeared.
Wow.
We have photos left of them. There's been a large repatriation effort over the course of the last 20 years, going back to these museums in France and England and the United States. The Met just returned a bunch of them. But there are a lot of these that are in the homes of private collectors. And so it's hard to get a good view of how many statues there actually were to see the variety of them. This image on the screen was monumental. So if you, this is the Pyramid of Kokare. It's a 7-tier solid stone pyramid. At the top, there were these Atlantean lions. And they're called that because they're holding up this large stone structure. Those lions are as tall as me.
Really?
Absolutely massive. So everything at Kokare, this is the site I think it's possible that it was pre-Diluvian. It's different than anything else in Cambodia. Ryan, if you go just maybe one more slide.
Where is it geographically compared to Angkor Wat?
It's about 150 miles northeast.
Okay.
In the middle of nowhere.
Huh, okay.
The mainstream story is that this site, there were two kings that were battling it out for the right to be the king. They were, I think, brothers or brother-in-laws. One king stayed in Angkor. The other one went out to Kokare and supposedly built everything that you see at Kokare in 13 years. Then he abandoned it all and went back to Angkor Wat. So all of these statues, I mean, you see the statue compared to the man there.
Wow.
These things are huge, extremely sophisticated. The pyramid itself is large. Ryan, if you go back to slide sorter, I can show you an overview of Kokare. It's by far my favorite site in Cambodia. If you scroll down a little bit.
What's the history on that image with the multiple arms of the person? Is that like a psychedelic trip image or something?
You have that image right on the statue by the cameras.
Right,
so this is the dancing Shiva.
Yeah. Okay. So this is like their god, basically.
So Shiva is the god of Kokare. It's the image that you see repeated over and over and over again. This particular one has 5 heads and I think 10 arms.
Okay. Yeah, Praveen Mohan gave me that statue.
Dancing Shiva is probably my favorite Hindu figure. Sorry, Ryan, we got distracted. If you could go back, I can show you the site from above. If you scroll down. So that's a view of Kokare from the top.
Okay.
It's incredible. The thing about Kokare is they thought it was a fairly small, simple site until LIDAR results came out. Kokare has a reservoir that they discovered using LIDAR north of the site that's the largest reservoir of the ancient world. So it had a 7-kilometer man-made dam going north of this site.
Wow.
It's a huge, huge reservoir north of this pyramid. The interesting thing about Kokare that you don't see anywhere else do you know what a lingam is?
I used to.
So it's I
know the word.
Now it's acknowledged as an image of Shiva. So it's a phallic-shaped symbol. If you go to slide 27. So these are giant lingams, and this is the thing that's interesting about Kokare. Most lingams are small, so they're the size of this piece of furniture in front of us, and they tend to be in the central shrines of Angkor Wat and other temples in Cambodia. The lingams at Kokare are monumental. They're huge, and there's 5 of them just east of the pyramid. There was supposedly one on top of the pyramid, and then there was one south of the pyramid. So there were 7 at this site. I think these lingams were part of some sort of an industrial process. So of course later they have become, an image of the Shiva deity where it's a male lingam that is inserted into a female yoni, so it's meant to symbolize male-female universal balance. But in certain parts of the world, in Kokare in Cambodia, the top right photo is at Hampi in India, where I just visited. That lingam's the size of a car. And the lingam on the bottom right is in northern India, and you can see it compared to the size of the people below it.
Yeah, it's huge.
So what you start to see is in certain parts of the world, there are these monumental lingams all housed in roofless structures, all surrounded by water. I believe these probably had water originally. They don't now in Kokere. If you look at ancient Hindu texts, like the Shiva Purana, they talk about the lingam as an infinite pillar of light and fire. So the way it's described in the ancient texts is not some small shrine that you pray to. They describe it as this very powerful weapon, symbolized by Shiva. So if that's the case, are we looking at, particularly at Kokere, this photo on the left, are we looking at the remnants of some sort of industrial process, ancient industrial process, where they were using these structures to maybe treat water, to create energy? I don't know, but I don't think that this is simply meant for worship. It's just too big. So the reason I like Kokere, and I have a video on Kokere on my YouTube channel where I go into all of these anomalies about it. It's the one site in Cambodia that has everything. It has the water features that we didn't know about until we saw LIDAR. It has these precision statues. It has lathed pillars. It has machined artifacts. It has these giant monumental lingams. It has laterite buildings. One is called the Temple of the Black Woman or Black Lady, and it's called that because all of the laterite is black, as if it's been burned or chemically treated. So when you walk around this site, you just see one example after another of things that do not fit the mainstream narrative. Yeah, that's the temple right there. So you can see most laterite is this like very light, kind of reddish looking volcanic stone. This temple is, that's a great photo right there. It looks burned or chemically treated, like something happened in this structure. That you don't see things like this anywhere else in Cambodia.
That's really cool. It's got trees growing at the top of it.
Yeah. And, that's the thing about Cambodia is it reclaims its structures very quickly.
Right.
The jungle just is very hard.
Right. Right. Yeah, stuff grows quick. And so all of that stuff is supposed to have been created here over a 13-year period.
Yes.
Wow. And so how many people are they saying he would have brought with him to?
Thousands and thousands. Yeah, and I do believe that this king came here during his succession battle. Yeah. His inscriptions are all over the sites. Okay. In the mainstream narrative, what they say is that the Khmer started building with brick, and then over time they became more advanced. So it's that same story you hear all over the world, and eventually built with stone. I think that what this king did is he came to Kokere because it was just this extraordinary site with a pyramid and lingams and statues, and boy, what a place to start. And I think he started fixing it up, and he did that with brick. So when you're at Kokere and you start looking at some of the temples there, you'll see these sandstone bases and these beautiful, huge doorways, and then you'll see above them brick repairs. So I think that this king was there for 13 years. I think he was doing his best to repair things. You can imagine showing up at this site that's been reclaimed by the jungle. You've got to redig all the moats. You've got to repair all of the buildings that have collapsed. I mean, that would take 13 years. And what a place to start, right?
And in the mainstream story, why would he have chosen this place 150 miles away? Just randomly would have just chosen just some place out in the middle of the jungle?
They say it's because his mother was from this area.
Okay.
I mean, nobody knows. Right, and they don't spend a lot of time explaining.
Right.
This is a great example, Ryan. So you can see the sandstone, like look at the huge pillars in the doorway. That's a sandstone lintel that above the doorway, that's a giant block of sandstone. And so I think what they found were these doorways remaining. And then they rebuilt what they thought it looked like with brick above what they found kind of remaining. And you'll see this all over Cambodia. The archaeologists don't differentiate this as two different building time periods.
Right.
They simply say, the early Khmer, they built with brick. But I don't personally, there's lots of examples of the brick structures trying to mimic stone structures that are still intact. There's lots of examples. I mean, if I were a builder and I could build pillars like that and lintels like that and doorways like that, I don't know why you would build something so amazing and then finish it off with brick and stucco. Mm-hmm. And it's what you see here. It's what you see all over India. You see it all over the world. It's the same story with the Inca in Peru. Mm. If they could build with stones like the ones we saw, why did they build with rough stones in other places?
Sure.
And on top of these sites?
And on top of them, yeah.
So it's the same story all over the world.
Are those pillars on the doorways, is that one piece or are those stacked rocks?
One piece.
Wow.
One piece, and many of them, not these particular ones, but many of them are lathed. You can see the lathe marks and then they went in later and carved the decorations on them. Mm-hmm. Ryan, if you could go back to my presentation. So the thing that I haven't talked about yet publicly that I want to talk about on this show, if you scroll down to slide 41. So I just want to kind of lay out the scale of infrastructure that was going on. And this is one example. This is the Eastern Beret that we talked about earlier. This blue square you see at the bottom of the screen here. So each beret in Cambodia, and there's 4 of them in the Siem Reap area. These are those giant man-made reservoirs. And there's one at Kokare. So there's 5 major berets in Cambodia. This is just one of them. And I want to kind of walk through all of the work and unexplainable things that they did and tell you what the archaeologists say that they were doing versus, I think we should open our minds a little bit and speculate a little bit about what they actually could have been doing here. So the Pook River is the river you see at the top of the screen. This is a river that flows from the Kulin Mountains, hundreds of miles away. It flows down. What these ancient builders did is they did a 16-kilometer diversion channel, taking water from the Pook River down to the Beret. But instead of going straight to the Beret, they veer off to the east. They bring it down past this mountain called Phnom Bok Mountain. And Ryan, if you go ahead one slide, at the top of this mountain is this lingam. This is my photo that I took at the top of the mountain. This lingam's probably 20 feet long.
Wow. Absolutely
enormous. It is sitting now at the top of the mountain. I don't know if that was its original spot. And after it goes past the lingam, if you go down one more slide, Ryan, it goes past this huge mound field that they discovered using LIDAR. This is a 10 by 10 mound field that's a mile across.
10 by 10.
10 mounds in one direction, 10 mounds in the other. So there's 100 within this mound field. I actually asked my driver to take me out to this mound field because I wanted to see what it looks like. And you can park at the corner of it. And right now this mound field is a giant, it looks like an orchard. It's covered in trees, but it's definitely farmed. And you can see these huge mounds as you look across the landscape. So these are still visible today. Now, if you go back up 2 slides, Ryan. So the water channels past Phnom Bok Mountain with the giant lingam. It goes across the north side of this mound field. So I have a miniature version of the mound field there on the screen. Into the northeast side of the Beret.
Okay.
Now, this beret is 7.5 kilometers long and almost 2 kilometers wide. It is huge. In the middle of the beret is a temple called East Mebon Temple, and there's a temple in the middle of every single beret. If you go down maybe 3 slides, Ryan, you can see a picture of the temple. So that's the picture of the temple in the middle of the beret. Now, the East beret is dried up, but you can see the landscape around it. That would have all been a giant body of water. Wow. You can see Phnom Bak Mountain off to the left. That's the one that has the lingam on it.
So they flooded that area with the water from the river intentionally.
Yes, completely surrounded this temple in the middle. And then if you go down one more, on the south side of the beret is a 3-tier pyramid called Pre Rup. It now has 5 brick towers on it, but I think originally those would not have been brick. I think those would have been some sort of sandstone. Those are clearly rebuilt. And if you go down one more slide, on the west side of the beret is the Takao Pyramid, which is this absolutely fascinating 5-tier pyramid with towers on the top that are built of that greenish gray wax sandstone that I told you about. This sandstone was quarried hundreds of miles away, brought to this pyramid. It's the only pyramid with greenish gray wax towers.
Is it the hardest stone within that area?
Yes.
And so they had to go that far away to get this hard stone to bring in. Yeah.
And they call this pyramid the Lightning Pyramid because in inscriptions, Khmer inscriptions, they talk about the fact that it was struck by lightning and abandoned.
Okay.
And so they call this an unfinished temple. They don't even call it a pyramid. They call all of these temple mountains. So it's a little bit interesting that they don't use the words pyramid. But this pyramid is to the west of the beret, and both pyramids are connected to it. So if you go back up to slide 41.
Struck by lightning and abandoned.
Yeah. So the Takao Pyramid, you'll see it to the west.
My house has been struck by lightning before, but we're still living in it.
Pre Rup Pyramid to the south, East Mebon in the middle, the mound field, the lingam, and water deliberately diverted down into this system.
Yeah.
The water then leaves the southeast side of this system and goes down to another system of berets and pyramids to the south.
Wow.
So when you start to look at this entire scenario, the archaeologists say that they used these berets for agricultural purposes. So they somehow thought that it was necessary to build a 7.5 kilometer long man-made reservoir to water their crops. They are silent on the mound fields, except they say they probably lived on them. They believe that the giant lingams were meant to be spiritual. The Pre Rup Pyramid, they say, is basically a burial temple. They say Takao is an unfinished temple. They say everything was built by the Khmer, and that's where they stop. To me, it feels like this is extremely deliberate engineering. It's an interconnected, very complex system with 2 pyramids, an island temple, a huge mound field. We don't even know what these lingams were doing, but they were obviously going through a substantial amount of work to divert this water into this system for a reason. Now, you can speculate all day long about what these are. And, I do a little bit of speculation in some of my videos. I actually just released a standalone episode on the Takao Pyramid. But I don't know what they are, What I do know is that the mainstream story doesn't make a lot of sense. So is it possible that they were engineering this for the purposes of fundamentally changing the structure of the water? Maybe. They've got, a vortex-like action. I don't know what the lingam was doing, but if you run water over mounds, you're going to create movement within the water. If you put it into a beret that's that big, that's pretty shallow. I think it was only 4 meters deep, something like that.
So it would have been flooded 12 feet deep, that entire 7-kilometer area. So that's 4 miles by 1.5 miles or something, flooded 12 feet deep.
Yes.
Just from that river.
Yes.
Wow.
That, that water would have been exposed to the sun. It would have potentially been exposed to minerals. Were the pyramids running some sort of an industrial process?
Let's get back to that in a second. Did they have to build walls or anything to keep this water? Because it's a perfect rectangle.
It's a large earthen wall that's very, very, very big. I mean, when you drive, you can drive all the way through the Eastern Beret today. There's a town in the middle of it because it dried up. In the Western Beret, you can see it very clearly. The walls are taller than this room.
So they would have brought earth and just stacked up a bunch of dirt 15 feet high to keep the water in.
I would think they would have dredged, when they were digging out the inside, they would have piled it up on the outside. But yeah, it was all to keep the water in. There's evidence in later Khmer times that they were having trouble managing this water system. It was a series of droughts and floods that they were trying. So in later times, you can see where they dug different channels to try to bring water straight into the berets because the other channels must have filled up with silt or something like that. And so you can see where they tried to engineer to bring water in quickly. And then you see evidence that water came in too quick and started flowing over the sides of these berets.
Sure.
So I think this was a system that they couldn't handle, right? They couldn't get it to work the way that it originally had worked. And they were trying. Of course, in later times, I do believe that they were using these to water crops and have water for their people. That makes all the sense in the world. You already have these huge lakes. The Western Beret is still full of water today. So it makes sense that they would have tried to leverage the existing infrastructure, but I don't think, and I would love to hear from your viewers, especially any of them with engineering backgrounds or water backgrounds or geology or industrial treatment, when they see a system like this, what do they think was actually happening? Because I think it's more than what we're being told.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's crazy. That's super cool. And they went all the way out of the way, I guess, to get to the water to this Bach Mountain.
Right. I mean, would it not have been easier to just engineer it straight south?
Totally. Yeah.
Something was happening over on the east side of this system.
Yeah. And I guess the mounds that are there were the same mounds that we saw right next to Angkor Wat, right? I mean, whatever those were used for would have been the same thing that these were used for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And, does it make sense that those were habitation mounds? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Maybe later.
Interesting.
A nice elevated spot away from the mosquitoes. Sure, go live on top of the hill.
Right. All right. Well, let's check one more site maybe, and we'll want to break for lunch probably in the next 30 or so. But let's go to one more site. Anything else in Cambodia worth talking about, or?
I would love to take you to India.
Okay.
Where I just visited. I'm still actually a little jet lagged from India. Ryan, if you could go to my India folder. I saw in India, probably in the Bahubali folder, and just start. Okay, that's a great picture to start with. So on top of this, that's not going to cause
Ryan's
problems for you, is it?
No. Ryan's still in middle school. That's all right. My 6-year-old would be dying right now too, Ryan, so you're not the only one.
So this statue is at the top of a granite mountain. This is made of granite.
Okay.
This is in southern India, about an hour west or an hour and a half west of Bangalore.
Okay.
This is the most impressive ancient structure I've seen with my own 2 eyes.
Why do you say that?
So you see the person at the bottom.
Just kidding. Yeah, go ahead.
This thing is 1,000 tons.
1,000 tons.
So
including that
2
part,
million pounds.
Is that part connected to it in the back of it? Then?
There's, I believe, I mean, when you research it online, people say it was carved somewhere else and taken to the top of this mountain. After putting my eyes on it, I believe that this probably was an original. I think it's attached. Whether it was, a giant stone standing that they carved, or did they actually, carve down the whole mountain like they did kind of at the Kailasa temple?
Okay.
Around this thing.
Okay.
His toes are 3 feet long.
Jesus.
He's almost perfectly symmetrical. He's made of white granite, and he's absolutely perfect. So, Ryan, if you could maybe just start kind of flipping through some of the photos in that folder, you can start to get a real sense of, if you look at Egyptian statues, the really ancient ones that look machined, this statue has a lot of similarities to that. Again, the absolutely
right,
enormous feet. Those inscriptions you see to the right of it are how they've dated this structure.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Again, built in, I think it was like 900 AD.
So it's like the possibility of somebody coming along and graffitiing their name into it after it was built.
You can see this thing from 50 miles away.
Yeah.
It is enormous. So there's more of the inscriptions. They just, to me, don't look the same as the carvings. Now, what is depicted in this carving is a man named Bahubali, who was a prince who found enlightenment. And so he went off into the woods and he stood for a year. And as he was standing there and didn't move, didn't sleep, nothing, just meditated for a year, these vines grew up around his legs. And that's the leaves you see across his body. He found full enlightenment. So there's the leaves coming up his left arm. I mean, look at the detail of the nipple. It looks extremely machined to me. It's exactly perfect. I mean, I sat at the base of this statue with my brother for probably 2 hours staring at it. It's a very famous pilgrimage site for Jains. There's his face up close.
For Jains?
Jain, the religion, the
okay.
ancient religion of the Jains. And so they do pilgrimages to this statue, but just take a look at the stonework on it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. His ears are 5.5 feet long. Taller than most of my friends.
Right.
Perfect fingernails. I mean, it takes a while to take this thing in. There's his hair from the back.
That's crazy.
And this thing is 60 feet tall. Wow. 6 stories. So this is a site that I had really not seen much of. Of course, there are a couple of, like Praveen has done a video on this. Praveen speculates that it was carved off-site and brought to the top of this mountain.
Okay.
Again, based on what I saw, I don't think so.
Okay.
But
and mainstream says that it was carved from the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I talked to a priest at the top of the mountain. I sat next to him for 20 minutes and chatted, and he told me it was carved from the top of the mountain. And you can see at the base of him. So this is the wall that, the structure they've built around it. That's how high he stands above the structure. So this is the walkway, the stairs that you climb up this. This is the granite hill that it stands on top of. It's 600 steps to the top, and because it's a sacred site, you climb it barefoot.
Okay.
And it's again one of those places like I talked about with Easter Island, where you're there and you just feel like you're healing.
Yeah.
The energy in front of this statue is incredible. And you look at him and it just feels like you are in the presence of something extraordinarily ancient that you can't explain, you know? And I personally believe that these ancient structures that were built, many of them were built specifically for that reason, to just inspire awe and curiosity and to make us think and make us grow. And that's how this particular statue, at the base of it, these are meant to show anthills and cobras that had grown up around his feet, and then the vines had grown up around his body because he stood still for so long. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you can kind of see the native stone behind him. That stone, and you can walk all the way around behind him. That's what makes me believe that that was carved from the living rock and not transported there. But I guess it's possible that it was.
That's crazy. So how long did it supposedly take to build this thing?
They don't say how long it took. They just say that, a king in 900 AD commissioned it. That's what these inscriptions say. Mm-hmm. And that he built it. Mm-hmm. There's no, there are other Bahubali statues. None of them are this. So this was clearly the original, the OG that was then copied. There are, I think, 3 or 4 other large statues. They're not as big as this one, but they're big. But when you look at them side by side, they're just not the same. I mean, they're not this.
That's cool.
Yeah. So this was probably my favorite part about my visit to India.
And would you say that was like...
So there's another Bahubali statue.
Okay.
This one, I don't know if his legs were cut off, but this one's about as tall as me.
Yeah. Okay.
There's it from the bottom of the hill. You can see him, So imagine before they built that structure around him, he was just standing there facing north, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just an incredible, and you can see the people walking up the side of the hill right there. Those blue awnings are shade because it's very hot in India in June.
Uh-huh. And the rock doesn't get hot on your feet?
It does get very hot on your feet.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to go see this site, I would recommend spending a lot of time outside on hot sidewalks barefoot.
Right.
You're going to need to build up some calluses, and you're going to need to find a way to deal with the heat. You can wear socks, but the rock is actually really slippery. So when you're walking, I finally succumbed to the heat.
Walking down would be pretty
I finally
treacherous.
succumbed to the heat on the way down and put my socks on, and I thought I was going to fall so many times.
Yeah. I was thinking about how many people must have died building the thing, but imagine how many people have died going up and down the thing as well,
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, this is, I think, kind of my mission is go to these places and talk about these sites that nobody else is talking about. Mm-hmm. I think we've got lots of really great minds on Egypt. We've got really great minds on South America. And everybody's sort of forgetting about all of these other incredible sites all over the world. And I think if you actually go to them and you do the research and you start connecting them like the giant lingams, you see the ones in India all by artificial bodies of water with roofless shrines. You see them in Cambodia. If you start traveling to all these places, you can start connecting dots and making a case for an ancient civilization that may have been globally connected, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, all of our minds together, but really getting out to these places, I think is a highly valuable thing to be doing.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's super cool. And these are spots that I have not covered in other episodes. So definitely appreciate you educating the audience about this today. Super cool. Let's take a break. Let's come back and we'll explore some other crazy places.
Sounds great.
All right. Awesome. We're going to finish off strong. We're going to finish with some talk on Thailand and an underground pyramid in Thailand.
Buried pyramid,
pyramid, which I'm pumped to hear about that. We're going to talk about Easter Island and your trek around Easter Island that a lot of people haven't done. But I want to start first with something that you mentioned casually at lunch. Well, I don't know if you'll want to talk about my Bigfoot experience or not, but we could always do that. So let's do that. What did you see and where did you see it?
Okay. So to be clear, to start out, I have not put my eyes on Bigfoot, but I believe with every cell of my body that we experienced Bigfoot.
Okay.
And we did this in the largest cave in the world, which is called the Sundong Cave in Vietnam. It's a cave that you have to make a reservation to hike through several years in advance. Only 1,000 people get to go through there a year.
Wow.
It is 3 times larger than the second largest cave in the world. It's 6 times larger than Mammoth Caves in Kentucky. So this thing is almost indescribably huge. And so we hiked through, to get from one end of the cave to the other takes 4 days, 3 nights.
Wow.
And they have this amazing crew of people that, you hike 7 miles in, you enter the cave, and then you spend 4 days inside this cave before you climb back out and hike back out. So it's truly one of the coolest experiences I've ever had in my entire life. And so in Vietnam, when we entered the cave, Ryan, there's a photo, I think it's called First Campsite. So just to show everybody the scale of this thing. So this is the view from the entrance of the cave where you first enter. You climb down to these rocks at the bottom of the picture. You take that boat. It's like a boat on a line or a raft. You take it across that water. That's the beginning of this river that goes through this cave. And the river, the cave most of the year is fully flooded. It's only in part of the year, a couple months a year, that it's low enough that you can actually hike through it. So this was the first night's camp spot. The crew is over on the right. The tourists are on the left. And behind those tents, you can see the saunas that they hiked in so that you can enjoy a nice sauna and dip after your hike.
Where's that?
Those blue tents in the back of the screen, the teal ones on the back left. Those are saunas.
Okay.
Yeah, that they hiked in so that you could enjoy a sauna after your big hike. Wow. This is the view from inside that, looking back out at the entrance.
Wow.
So the story starts, this cave is so big that you could park a 747 in here. Just absolutely massive.
It goes on for longer than this area here.
Way longer. Yeah. 4 days worth of pretty intense hiking.
Wow. In darkness or?
Well, there are multiple areas in this cave. This is a good example where the limestone roof has collapsed. They call them dough lines.
Okay.
And so every day, basically, you end up camping next to one of these where there's this whole new ecosystem inside of the cave because the roof has collapsed, trees have grown in there. There's animals inside this cave that exist nowhere else in the world. There's a kind of shrimp, there's millipedes, things like that they only live here.
Wow.
So you hike through the dark, but you camp next to these dough lines where you get natural sunlight. So it doesn't feel like being underground for 4 days, even though you effectively are. So Ryan, if you go back to the first photo of the campsite, so the story starts on the first night. I woke up at 11 p.m. and I went to the restroom, and that photo right there. And I noticed that there is a tour guide guy who's scanning the wall of the cave with his flashlight in the middle of the night. And I was like, that's weird. I wonder what...
Right here at this...
Yes. So you can't get here unless you take the boat. You can't walk up to this campsite. So it was curious to me, what could he possibly be looking for? The other thing that we were hearing in this first campsite were these very loud crashing sounds. It sounded almost like rocks falling, which is a concerning thing if you're inside a cave to hear that.
Right.
And all of the people that were on this tour, and there were, I think, 8 of us, all of us heard it, or 10 of us maybe. So the next morning I woke up and I was not suspecting a thing at this point. I was just like, why was one of the porters scanning the walls with a flashlight? And what were those loud sounds last night? And the story we got for both of those instances was the porter was looking for water buffalo, making sure that the water buffalo didn't come in, which is a weird thing because water buffalo are not going to climb down into this cave and swim across that channel to go disrupt a bunch of campers. So the that was strange. And then he said that the large crashing sounds were porters slapping their mats against the ground, which is not what we heard. So those were two very suspicious stories. So we proceed for another 2 days through this cave. Nothing happens. And then we get to, Ryan, if you pull up a photo called Garden of Edom, Edom, it is this, yes, there it is. This absolutely monster opening that, you know, you hike into it. There's, in the right photo, you can see people at the bottom.
Wow.
For scale, those little red dots are people.
Yeah.
So this thing is absolutely enormous. It's where the roof of the cave has collapsed. When you walk up into this section of the cave, you can go two directions. You can hike back down to the left where we camped, or you can hike off to the right, and there's this whole side of the cave, that a whole tunnel that you can't go into. And we asked them, do you go in there? One guy said, no, it's full of mud. The other one said it hasn't been mapped yet. Because this whole cave system was discovered in the 90s. So it's brand new.
Okay.
So we ended up camping that night at the base of this Garden of Edom. And what happened that night was absolutely fascinating. So every other night, the porters had camped completely at a different side of the campground than us. That night, they surrounded us with their tents. So our tents were in the middle, their tents were on all the sides. And right before we went to bed...
And did they give any explanation for that?
None.
Okay.
No. Right before we went to bed, our main tour guide said, if you happen to hear a baby cry in the middle of the night, don't worry, that's just a giant squirrel. And I am a bit of a Bigfoot enthusiast, so I immediately light bulb on, because that is one thing that Bigfoot is known to do, is mimic human babies.
Okay.
You hear this in lots and lots of stories.
Okay.
Human babies, crying women. I mean, owls, they like to mimic. At least that's what the stories say. So as soon as he said crying baby, I was like, oh my goodness, something might be happening here beyond what they're telling us. So we all go to bed, and I'm super excited, and I can't sleep because I'm like, there might be a Bigfoot in this cave. And there are famous stories in the Vietnam War about the Vietnam rock apes, is what they were called. So this is a lore that goes very far back, at least to the Vietnam War, where these American soldiers went over and encountered large 6 to 8 foot monkeys, apes, that were standing on 2 legs and harassing them and throwing rocks at them and standing up on hilltops and looking down at them. There's all these stories in the Vietnam War, which is a super interesting rabbit hole if you care to go down it. So this is not something new, this concept of a Bigfoot in Vietnam. So anyway, we go to bed that night, and I don't sleep because I'm too excited. And at about 11 o'clock, we start hearing these sounds. And it's like, clack, clack. And then 20 seconds would pass, and clack, clack. 20 seconds. And I'm like elbowing my husband, and I'm like, did you hear that? And he's like, yeah, I heard it. And I was like, that's Bigfoot. And he's like, that's really weird. I don't know if it's Bigfoot, but it's really weird. And it went on for hours. Clack, clack. There was
20 seconds apart.
Yeah. And another thing that Bigfoot is known for is it's called wood knocks. So if you're out in the forest and you encounter one, oftentimes people will report the sound of wood hitting wood, or sometimes rocks clacking together. So this is also a thing that is within the lore. So we get up the next morning, and I have all sorts of questions for these tour guides. And they don't know why I'm asking these questions, but I'm asking them because I'm trying to get to the bottom of their story. And so I say, hey, did you hear any crying babies last night? And the guide was like, no, I woke up at 3 a.m. and listened, and I didn't hear any. And I was like, 3 a.m. is interesting. That tends to be when activity is at its height. And I said, well, I did hear some sounds of like rocks clacking. And he said, that was water dripping on one of our stools. And I just look at my husband, and I'm like, likely story. This is not. So I was like full alert.
So what did it sound like? What did it sound like? Wood or rocks? It
sounded like 2 rocks, big rocks, just being smashed together.
Okay.
And
So
in this cave,
not
you can
water
imagine
dripping.
how that echoes.
Right.
So it sounded like it was coming from up in this forested area.
Okay.
And one thing I forgot to mention is on the ground inside this forest area there's bones everywhere. Now, what the tour guides told us is that birds drop them from above, or animals fall in, wild
Animals
pigs
fall
and
in,
things
sure.
fall into this hole and
Yeah,
die.
that makes sense.
But there are bones all over this forest floor in here.
Okay.
So that's interesting. And the rock clacks, everybody heard them, and any sound inside these caves, it just echo. I mean, you could hear it all night long. It was super loud. It was definitely not water dripping on a stool.
Right.
So we proceed to leave the cave, and I'm standing right behind. Here's another photo of the inside of it. There's people in the background there for scale. You can see the guy standing on the rock, and then the people all the way up at the back of the cave. That's called the James Bond hole.
Oh, wow.
The tour guides do an awesome job of doing like lighting. So they run up ahead and light it up
Okay.
for photo opportunities. So that's what both of these are. That's probably the largest, I guess, stalagmite in the world.
Wow.
Maybe.
Wow.
There's all of us standing in front of it. It's just one of the coolest places I've ever been in my life. So we're leaving the cave, and I'm deliberately hiking right behind the main tour guide because I'm trying to ask him questions. And one story that I got out of them was that when they were first mapping the cave, they were going through and, because I was like, are there monkeys in the cave? Because there are small monkeys around the Vietnam jungles, not big ones, but small ones. And he's like, when we were mapping the cave, and it was the safety guy that was telling me this story, and he was like, there were people, our porters were behind us, and one porter kept throwing sticks at me. And I got really mad at him, and I was yelling at him for throwing sticks, and he was like, it's not me throwing sticks, it's the monkeys. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's totally Bigfoot in this cave. The last little point of reference is my father-in-law, my husband's dad, he actually fought in the Vietnam War. And so he was telling me a story of when they were in Vietnam, they were camping out in the jungle one night, and they had, set up their perimeter. And one other soldier was lying in his tent, sort of across camp from where my father-in-law was. And he had his feet outside of his tent because it's really hot and miserable inside this jungle. And he said something grabbed his foot. And he thought it was one of his friends messing with him. So he kind of kicked and yelled at him. And then nothing happened for a minute. And then something grabbed his foot again and shook it really hard. And he got mad. So he sat up in his tent. And when he sat up, something reached through the tent and just punched him in the face. And completely flattened. Like my father-in-law said, it looked like he walked straight into a wall. So this guy, of course, had to be helicoptered out, emergency surgery in the hospital. He had been in country for 2 weeks, and he got a Purple Heart.
Wow.
And got sent home. And what he told everybody is that a monkey had punched him. When he sat up and looked outside of his tent, there was a giant monkey that was obviously enormously strong that had punched him. And, my father-in-law was like, we had always called them orangutans, but there aren't orangutans in Vietnam. So it must have been something else. Okay. So anyway, that's my Vietnam Bigfoot story.
Okay, that's really cool.
Really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a cool experience. Yeah, and what were the other people on the trip with you? What did they think about the sounds and the experience in totality?
Well, I'm the only one that's into Bigfoot lore.
Okay.
So I was educating them on baby cries and rock clacks.
Yep.
Once they heard the rock clacks and things like that, they were a little suspicious too. Yeah. But, I don't think that they really cared that much.
Yeah.
Not as much as I did.
What's the best evidence for Bigfoot that exists out there, do you think?
In my opinion, it's the thousands of witness accounts.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have seen something.
Yeah. I mean, even if 10% of those people are telling the truth, it just feels like it's something, something's out there. There's a podcast I listen to called Sasquatch Chronicles, and a guy named Wes hosts that podcast, and he is an experiencer. And he just interviews lots and lots of people and hears their stories. And so when you start to listen to all the stories, which is one of my favorite pastimes, you start to just, this story links with this story and that story sounds like that story. And it feels not unlike the UFO phenomenon. It feels like that's the best evidence, is that there's so many people all over the world who have had these experiences,
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I had a Sasquatch expert on and we talked, and it was a great conversation. And I guess I still, there, as compared to the UFO phenomenon, you just don't have the videos or the images or anything, but you have all of these people seeing something, and
right.
Something's happening. And so I think I had the Snake Brothers on really early on, and we were talking about it a little bit, and I was kind of like, well, where's the evidence? And they kind of said, yeah, but people are seeing something, and
yeah.
It's true. It kind of changed my perspective a little bit to, okay, well, what's really going on?
And I don't think as a whole people are liars.
Right.
When you have that many people, many of them hunters, and we're hunters, we know a lot of hunters. Those guys, they don't tell stories, they don't spin tales. They're actually more afraid of telling that story because it's going to make them seem crazy. And I've had lots of stories from people I know, even in Colorado, who have told stories of hunting and seeing things that are unexplainable. And there was a story of one hunter where I live in Colorado who just watched a Bigfoot step into a meadow that he was watching, and then it just disappeared. He said it's like it dematerialized in front of him. And then he heard these noises behind him, and felt very strongly that something was just right next to him, but he couldn't see anything. And this guy never really recovered. It scared him. It changed his life. He stopped drinking after that experience, and this wasn't somebody out. I don't think he ever publicly told his story. He just told his friends, So, and there's thousands and thousands of stories like that.
Yeah. And there seems to be like a paranormal component to the whole conversation too.
Yep.
A lot of times, like it's like pixelated, or it disappears, or, there's oftentimes some kind of unexplainable phenomenon happening with the Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The only thing I know is we have no idea what kind of a reality we're actually living in, whether it's these ancient sites or UFOs or Bigfoots. I just think for us to believe that the only things that exist are the things we can see, touch, taste, and feel is not the right way to be thinking about the world that we live in. And we should at least be open.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely agree. Well, let's go to Thailand, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, what's there? This crazy pyramid.
So I went to Thailand in February.
Okay.
I went with my sister-in-law, and for a week we looked at ancient sites. And for a week I was there with a nonprofit that I'm on the board of. It's an anti-human trafficking nonprofit we have major operations in Thailand. So It was kind of a joint trip for me, which was really cool to kind of mirror those two. So in the first half of that trip, we went to a site called Tep, which was just, I think in 2020, was like nominated to be a World Heritage Site. And it was, I was there to see the famous Khmer structures, because with the Cambodia study that I'm doing, I wanted to see what were their major bases in Thailand, what are their major bases in Laos. And so that was my goal, was to see the Khmer structures, so Pamai and things like that. But there was this one site that it looked nothing like the stuff in Cambodia. And I was fully intrigued by it. So we took the 3-hour trip out there to see it. And it's called Tep. It's got a site to the south that's fully moated. So it's a couple kilometers long, a man-made moat all the way around it. It's definitely got structures at the base that are what they call the Dwarawati culture, Dvarati, Dwarawati. And this was a precursor to the Khmer Empire in Thailand, or a culture that got taken over by the Khmer later. So they attribute this site to the Dwarawati. North of this site, about a kilometer and still part of it, is a pyramid that was 20 years ago, nobody knew existed. It was buried under a mound of dirt. And Ryan, yep, there's a photo of it. So they had built the road around this mound. It was covered in trees and dirt, and the archaeologists found bricks on top of it. And so they and some stones and things that had kind of made its way out of the dirt. So they started digging, and what they found, Ryan, if you can show a picture of the pyramid from the sky, it's this at least 2-tier, who knows how many tiers originally, structure it's all made of laterite, which is a volcanic stone. You see a lot of laterite structures in Cambodia as well. And it's laterite that's carved in ways that I haven't seen it carved before in other sites in Cambodia. So this feels like a different kind of culture to me. You can see, the sophistication of these carvings. It's very, it almost looks like, I don't know, like a superhero kind of Transformers sort of image if you're looking at the side of it. Again, something I'd never seen before. But I found this site really interesting because the Dwarawadi all over Thailand and Myanmar, that culture built almost entirely of brick. And you can see their stuff everywhere. And because there was a brick stupa built at the top of the structure, which you can see in the middle of it, the whole thing is being attributed to this Dwarawadi culture. And nobody's talking about the fact that there was a pyramid underneath that brick structure that was fully buried. Was it buried deliberately? I think so, because if you look at the surrounding landscape, it's not like there's hills everywhere. I mean, this would have been a deliberate hill in the middle of an otherwise very flat landscape. So the pyramid was really, really interesting to me to start to research, because when I see things like this, and this is why I call my channel Secrets in Stone, is I think that these structures, if you look at them and you analyze them, they will tell you things, right? So what this tells me is some culture built the pyramid that was underneath it. Another culture built the bricks on top of it at a later time. And if you compare the brick structure to all of the rest of Dwarawadi structures, it makes perfect sense that they would say that, except for the Dwarawadi never built pyramids. And this is a huge pyramid. It's got 4 walkways going up, and you can kind of see in that photo from the air, there were these big column, these like stamps at the top where you can see that columns used to be. So at the top of this pyramid, there were columns all the way across it at some point. So this was a different kind of structure than how it looks now. There were 2 pretty interesting things that came out of my research with this pyramid. Ryan, if you go, there are some pictures of some statues that were discovered here.
Just so I understand, the bottom 2 levels were totally under dirt when they found it 20 years ago,
buried.
30 years ago.
Didn't even know it existed.
Right, and then the bricks were kind of poking out from the top of that mound.
Yes.
And so how much of the bottom 2 levels were rebuilt, or versus, is that exactly what it looked like?
It looked, Thailand does a great job of rebuilding their ancient sites and keeping them up. So certainly they did some repairs, but those bottom 2 layers were there when they excavated.
Okay. And so it would have been those 2 layers and the top would have been intentionally buried, possibly. That's the explanation.
In my opinion, it was intentionally buried.
Okay.
Now, was it buried by the Dwarawadi? Maybe. Maybe they had always had a brick structure on top of it, and then for some reason, maybe there was a war coming or something, and they wanted to hide it. Or maybe it was buried before the Dwarawadi were there, and they found this big mound, and they built their structure on top of it.
Right. And when were they
like
also?
700 AD.
Okay.
And, the Khmer came in around like 1,000 or 1,100.
Right.
So yeah, that's what it looked like, when they were excavating it.
Wow. just incredible that they could.
As you can see it sort of popping out of the dirt.
Right, right.
Yeah, so they found some really interesting artifacts at this site. The Dwarawadi build these very simple statues, not the ones on the screen. They build things that look almost primitive. You know, they're made of different. These are made of very high quality sandstone and other stones. The Dwarawadi ones are just simplest. So if you go to the museum in Bangkok and you look around all of the artifacts that have been discovered at their brick sites, it just looks very, very different. But what they found here, so the statue on the right was found at Sitep. And it doesn't look anything like all of the other statues that were found at Sitep. This Sitep is where this laterite pyramid is. And what this photo on the screen is showing is that, also tying back to Cambodia, at 2 sites in Cambodia, both of them on the left, also brick structures, they found these 2 statues in Cambodia. It buried at the base of these structures. These, to me, feel very, very sophisticated, very advanced, and they look a whole lot like each other to me. So every one of these statues, according to mainstream archaeology, were built by completely different, very small pre-Khmer civilizations. The Chenla on the left, Funan in the middle, Dwarawadi on the right. And I think this is a great example of the opportunities that are being missed in modern archaeology, because people aren't looking at this kind of evidence and opening up their minds and saying, gosh, isn't it possible that all of these were built by the same people, and that the Chenla and the Funan and the Dwarawadi later came in and found these and venerated them and buried them in their sites. And, you know, what an amazing thing to put at the site that you built, right? But I don't believe that the same people that were building with brick were carving these. So this was,
How big are these things?
These are 8 feet tall.
All 3 of them?
Yeah, they're huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what are the things what are the posts?
You know, you see those in a lot of the Cambodian carvings. I think it was a way, you know, to stabilize the statue. Most of these deities had multiple arms, and so they would connect the arms to this structure on the outside, and I think it was a way to keep stone from breaking, right? And so I think it was more for preservation than anything.
Okay. Yeah, those are crazy cool.
Really, really cool. And yeah, if you go to any of the museums in Cambodia or Bangkok, you're going to find these very out of place statues like this. The other interesting thing that was at this site is there's something called shell script, which is an entirely, nobody has translated it to this day. There's examples in multiple places so there's the example of the shell script found in Thailand. It was a pillar. And, you know, linguists and archaeologists call this a language. They call it a script, an undeciphered one. On the left is the one in Thailand. There are a couple of examples in India, and then there's one example in Indonesia. And it's the only places in the world that they've found this script, and one of them was in Thailand.
That's the same script on the left and the right?
Yeah, well, according to, they call it shell script. Yep.
Okay. So
pretty interesting mysteries hanging out at that one tiny little site in Cambodia.
Right, but that's not just art. They actually think that this is...
They call it, they call it a script. I mean, it looks a little bit arty, and it's undeciphered, so I suppose it's possible that it's art.
How much of this do we have?
We have this one example in Thailand, one in Indonesia, and like 4 or 5 different sites in India.
Okay, interesting.
Again, it's another connection between these sort of far-flung areas.
Has any LIDAR been done at this site?
I think some has been done in Thailand around the Khmer structures. I don't think that LIDAR has been done at this site in particular. And the results have not, I've seen like 1 or 2 images from the stuff in Thailand. It's very not published.
Okay. And the first 2 layers, is there anything inside of those, or is that just solid?
I believe it's solid laterite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So whatever ceremonies or whatever was happening would have been being done on the outside of the structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it's perfectly symmetrical, and it faces exact north, exact east, so they had the alignments perfect on it.
Interesting.
Not unlike all of the other, mysterious pyramids around the world.
Right. We going to Easter Island?
Let's go to Easter Island.
All right, let's do it. You did a hike there?
Yes.
That not that many people do, right?
Yeah, so if you travel in Easter Island, there's kind of this main tourist route that everyone goes on, which is, the island's very small to begin with, but you end up driving, up one road, up the east side, you see all of the famous moai, and you call it good. There is an opportunity on Easter Island to do a full day hike, point to point. So Ryan, if you wanted to pull up maybe like an aerial map of Easter Island, I can show you generally where this hike is. And the thing that I found most interesting about this hike is everybody knows about Ahu Vanapu, the famous megalithic wall in Easter Island that looks a whole lot like the walls in Peru.
Just exactly like it. Yeah.
So here's the map of Easter Island. The hike is called the West Coast hike or North Coast hike. So you start kind of halfway up the West Coast, and you hike all the way up to the north of the island where you get picked up. So there's no roads, as you can see, on that side of the island at all. When you're out there, you are completely on your own. There's no trails. You're out there with horses and things like that. You don't see another person the whole day. So it's a really cool experience.
That's cool.
So Ryan, if you wanted to pull up the Ahu Vanapu wall, we can just remind everybody what
those cows?
Those are cows.
Okay.
And it's a very volcanic landscape. So there's the famous wall. People use people take a lot of photos of this wall, and they talk about, gosh, that looks so similar to the walls in Peru.
Totally. And it's basalt.
Yeah. And if you ask, Brian Forrester, I think, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he believes that these are not necessarily the same as Peru, but they're obviously very similar. There's very similar shapes and engineering. There's that little keyhole stone in the middle. These rocks are really, really large too. So anyway, in my opinion, this is advanced ancient engineering happening here. But the story you'll hear is there's just one wall, and all the rest of them have been destroyed. But that's actually not true. There's walls like this all the way up the West Coast. You just have to put on a backpack and hike 13 miles to see them.
Okay.
So here's a photo of the general landscape there. It's a bit of a rugged hike. You do need a guide because otherwise you're probably not going to. But yeah, so that picture of me with the blue shirt just below your cursor, Ryan, is a good one. Yep. So those are the walls that are up on the West Coast.
Wow. And nobody knows about these or talks about these.
Nobody talks about this.
Wow. I legit thought that the only wall like that on Easter Island was that famous basalt wall.
I know.
Wow.
And if you read, that's what they say. So you can keep clicking through them. Yeah. So that's my brother. I call this a unit of megalithic measurement, his wingspan, because it's often the only measuring tape we have.
Right.
So probably about a 6'6" wingspan. He's a pretty tall guy. So that's the size of those stones. He's probably 6'3". Huge rocks. There's me next to one. You can see examples of where these have been knocked over and just dragged a little bit of a distance, like they were going to go reuse them and then gave up. You can keep going through some of these. Like there's some more, and it's just all the way up the coast. And there's look at that little keyhole triangle rock in there.
Wow. Up and left. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
These are very well fitted, pretty weathered. They're right on the coast. So imagine the millennia of.
And what is this? What are these made out of? Is this, that looks almost more like volcanic rock, but is that?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the same thing that the moai are made out of, that volcanic
right.
ash.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Except for the basalt moai.
Right.
Which there's a couple of those. So yeah, that photo.
Makes sense that it's more weathered.
Yep. So yeah, this is what it looks like. But it was, if you want to scroll up a little bit, Ryan, there's some pretty interesting, these are some underground kind of shelters that I think were built later, because you can see they reused some very big stones to build it. Uh-huh. And inside the entire cavern underneath is made of reused what they call boat houses. That top photo is a good one to show. Yeah, so that's where one has fallen down. So you can see how they were constructed. On the island of Easter Island, there's, I think, 3 basalt moai that are still there. You know, there's the famous one that was taken to the British Museum.
Right.
That's obviously the coolest one. But there's 3 more. One of them is on this West Coast hike. And weirdly, it's built into the wall facing in. So it's not facing out toward you when you walk up to the wall. It's turned around and it's parked into the wall and with stones built around it. Okay. So one of my big takeaways in Easter Island is, yeah, there he is. You can see his shoulders. He's on the right side of the photo.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see his shoulders and his head. And, standing next to that guy made me a little sad, because I was like, how many thousands of years or hundreds of years has he been facing in with, small stones built around him, when originally my guess is he was probably facing out.
Right. So they potentially would have just moved that and made it a part of
the
wall they were building.
And you can definitely see, just like everywhere else in the world, where they were rebuilding using much smaller stones.
Right.
The moai themselves go from monumental, some not even taken from the quarries, all the way down to very, very small. So
did you get any sense for like the layout of the walls and how they were what were the walls a part of, or what was where were they? Were they just randomly placed everywhere?
They're just, they call them ahus, and a lot of times it will be a wall with moai mounted on top of them. And sometimes they're just the walls. Who knows if the moai have been removed? They look to me like, they're looking out in different directions, oftentimes over the ocean. I don't think that they had, a great deal of functional use. I think that they were just these monumental building activities that the original inhabitants of that island were building. There was an interesting story I heard from my tour guide. One of the ahus, one of the famous ones in the 60s, was blown over by a tsunami.
Okay.
And this guy's uncle was, he's one of the original, his family goes all the way back on Easter Island, our tour guide. And his uncle was one of the first people on the scene after this ahu had been blown over. And what he found there was pretty interesting. He found elongated skulls.
Really?
Scattered around. So the assumption would be that those would have probably been inside the ahu before it was exploded by the tsunami. The other thing he found were Rongo Rongo tablets. The undeciphered writing that they found in Easter Island that they still to this day don't know.
Is that when those were found for the first time?
No.
Okay.
He knew what they were. He recognized it immediately. He took all of them and they ended up in museums.
Okay.
But you don't hear about elongated skulls.
Right.
In association with Easter Island. You hear mostly about Peru and other places like that. So that was a really interesting, just, in the car driving with our guide, just story that he told us about his uncle.
Has that been proven, or has that been is there evidence that this happened? Pictures or
there's evidence of no. I mean, I don't think there's evidence of him. Pictures that he took of the skulls.
The skulls,
as I understand it, the skulls ended up in museums in Chile.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
I don't know if they're on display anymore or not, so yeah, evidence probably not.
Yeah,
but it is an interesting story.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay.
So Easter Island is a really cool place. It feels like a place where it's not taboo to talk about UFOs and spirituality and entities and, these really giants, their kind of day-to-day language and the stories that they tell. It's very much a present part of their lives that they talk about, and nobody calls them crazy for doing it. So it was a really neat experience to speak with my guide and his mother who took us on the hike. And, they all had really interesting stories that make you think.
Have you tried to piece together your total overall picture of what this civilization would have been like, what areas it was occupying, at what time it was building, what kind of some of the, structures or tech or whatever, kind of meant, what they were doing, do you have I know it's hard to piece together all of that, but do you have your own kind of theory on what was happening, when, why, how?
Yeah. That theory of mine continues to evolve.
Yeah.
At first, I thought, gosh, there must have been one unified global ancient civilization. And the only thing that we see from them today are stone structures. That's what would have survived the flood, myths, and spiritual practices. And if you dive into any of those three things, you can really start to get your hands on some really interesting stories and some things like that. So what I'm now starting to believe is there were probably several different global civilizations. Earth is very big.
And very old.
And very old. And I do believe that they were in touch, in contact, because you see the same things all over the world, what everybody talks about. You see the nubs, you see the clamps, you see the megalithic walls. But they're all a little bit different. They have a different theme to them. The stuff in Egypt looks different than the stuff in Peru. And what Brian Forrester would say is Egypt feels very left-brained, Peru feels a little bit right-brained, more artistic. The stuff in India and Southeast Asia feels entirely different from the stuff in Peru and Egypt. If I were able to bet on what actually happened, I think there were probably at least 3, if not more, major ancient civilizations, one in Southeast Asia, one around Egypt, one around South America, maybe a whole nother one in Bolivia because their stuff looks different. Mm-hmm. I think that they probably had access to technology, but not in the way that we think about it. We think about computers and machinery and things. I think that theirs was probably more psychic kind of technology, telepathy and potentially moving stones with sound or song. You hear legends about that, of people singing stones into place, right? You hear lots and lots of legends of structures being built cooperatively between humans and angels. The humans worked during the day, the angels worked at night. That story is pervasive in Ethiopia, for example. So I think that our stories and our myths preserve this, what actually happened, but we write it off. So we go around the world, and in Thailand, we say it was a small culture that built this. And in India, we say the small tribe built this. And we piecemeal everything instead of looking at it all as one giant clue, a puzzle that we can piece together. And we write off the myths as just stories of these knuckle draggers who didn't understand what an asteroid was. And so I think that there was probably a civilization that existed pre-Ice Age. I'm pretty much convinced that there was. I don't know if there were civilizations before that at 40,000 years, at 60,000 years, at 100,000 years. But certainly I think there's enough evidence with especially these megalithic structures to say there were things being built on this planet that we can't explain. And those are really interesting clues that were left behind, I think, for a reason. I think they were built in the places they were built for a reason, because they were power centers. There are places that you can drop into meditations very easily. You can get healing in a lot of these places, but sometimes spontaneous healings. Water is different in these places. And so I think they built in specific spots power centers of the world for a reason. And in some of the structures, it feels like they did it just because they could, you know? Mm-hmm. And that leads to the question, why? Was it just because it was easy? Or was it because they knew something was coming and they wanted to leave, whether in mathematics or astronomical alignments or simply stones that blow our minds, enough that it causes us to look at them, ask questions, and be curious. And, you know, if enough of us are open to this, I think we can start to piece together this puzzle. And I do think that that's starting. It feels like there's some momentum growing in this space, and people are getting really interested, and their minds are opening up, and they're starting to ask these questions.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, for sure. No, the momentum's building for sure.
Yeah.
Have you always been interested in these mysteries, or was there a turning point in your life?
I've always liked history. You know, we talked about lithics and things like that. You know, I had a very normal human life for the first 38 years, where I worked in corporate America and I did finance and I sat in boardrooms and I, you know, all of it. And then one day in my late 30s, I woke up, my mom passed away, and that was, you know, that tends to happen when you have kind of a jarring event in your life.
Yeah.
That sort of started to wake me up. And then one day I woke up and I said, I don't want to work in corporate America anymore. I want to do something different. So I left 4 years ago. And then, you know, once you leave corporate America and you recover, both spiritually and physically, and you get everything kind of back in shape, then it frees up a bunch of space in your life to start to think about more interesting things. And that's the route that I took. So we have continued to travel. We did Egypt, and of course I stumbled on Ben Van Kerkwick's work and Derek Olson's work, and one thing led to another, and here I am. And it's one of I've never in my life had the opportunity to really align like my brain and my heart. You know,
right.
It's always been one or the other. And so this work feels like it's just I'm in the flow when I do it. I feel passionate about it. I hope that when I'm 90, I can still crawl around these sites and look at the stones and touch them and try to figure out what our deep history is. Mm-hmm. So
that's cool. Well, yeah. What's next for you? What are you working on? What are your plans coming up?
Well, I have a couple more podcast appearances coming up, and then
Can you mention?
Well, I have Joe Rogan.
Yeah, that's cool.
Coming
Congrats.
up in July, which is really, I'm so excited about that.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
that'll be great.
It's really exciting. And then I will be presenting basically my entire Cambodia theory at the Gaia Ancient Civilizations Conference in my home state of Colorado. It's up in Boulder. So that's the first week of August. And the only other trip I have planned is a trip to Japan in like September. So we're going to go check out some of the Japanese megaliths and eat some sushi. And yeah, I think the rest of the year I'm just going to try to take it easy. It's been a little bit of a whirlwind for me.
I'm sure. Yeah, it's a lot of travel.
Yeah.
In Japan, what are you going to see? Are you going to see that UFO that's out in the woods?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are.
That thing's crazy.
And the
granite,
the
right?
quarry and the castle walls and all of the famous.
Yep.
You know, I'm not sure. I really feel like my bread and butter are sites nobody talks about. So I may or may not end up doing like episodes on Japan, but I do think it was one of our it was a core megalithic place and a place that's been kept up really well. So I do want to get my eyes on those stones.
Tell people about your channel and just kind of how the episodes work and just your basic format that you have on the channel.
So I started my YouTube channel a year ago. And so I've only been at it a year. So it's been an interesting, very cool, magical mystery tour of a ride. The videos I put out, again, are on sites that people don't talk as much about. Almost all of them, if I can travel there, I do. You know, so I've done videos on Yemen and Ethiopia. That's purely research, just because the security situation there makes it difficult to get my feet on the ground. But almost everywhere else, it's my own footage. It's me looking at the official history of the site and then poking holes in that and talking about what I think could possibly have been going on there. They usually range between like 20 and 30 minutes long. And, you know, life has been busy this year, but I endeavor to get something out every couple of weeks. So it's
cool.
Yeah, I don't have, any major plans in the near term except to just keep trying to get better at what I'm doing, keep connecting with people. I think the more people that are talking about this, the better our planet's going to be.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's my ultimate goal.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. I mean, the sites that you went to, just that we talked about today, are just mind blowing, just incredible. No matter which angle you're looking at them from, it's incredible works of human ingenuity. So super cool. I appreciate the time and getting to know you and spending some time with you today. Very, very fun. What did we miss? Did anything else on your mind for today?
No, I think we covered all of it, and I just I appreciate your generosity. It was so fun seeing your faces.
Cool.
Oh my goodness,
cool, yeah.
That was one of the highlights of my life.
Okay, cool.
Such a cool collection you have, and
thank you.
Yeah, so we're just gonna hang out in Florida for the weekend and try to. We live in Vail, Colorado, so it's a little hot down here.
Yep,
so we'll probably
warm.
spend some time by the pool and go see some manatees tomorrow. But yeah, thank you for your generosity and
Absolutely.
for the invite. It was a real pleasure.
Well, thank you, because I've really enjoyed this. And that's one of the, like I said, the coolest gift that I've gotten on this show so far, to have something that's potentially 10, 12,000 years old that was used to hunt and kill mammoths or, whatever. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, if you think about the number of humans that have touched that,
yeah,
it's probably the guy who made it.
Yeah.
You, me, and my husband.
Right. Yeah, so that's pretty amazing.
It's pretty special.
Pretty special, for sure. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your time and knowledge and interest in coming down and doing the show. So very cool. Very cool.
Yep. Thanks so much.
Awesome. We'll wrap with that.